Trump keeps shocking everyone with his decisions more and more. The dialogue between the US and Russia was shocking. In the statements made in Saudi Arabia, there was something interesting. Zelensky reacted strongly to what's happening. Ukraine is irreversibly losing territory. Trump back is ready to deploy troops. And Putin, in a panic, is once again talking about the illegitimacy of the Ukrainian president. About the main topic next.
The negotiations have already begun. Negotiations between the American delegation and representatives of the aggressor country Russia have started in the capital of Saudi Arabia. As we know, a way to determine whether the Russians' intentions are serious and if they are on the same page as the US regarding the cessation of the war in Ukraine.
The meeting in Saudi Arabia, Mathus, is extremely significant because the first stage, which is important for Putin, is a call. He received it. Now, there's a meeting at the command level. By the way, the representation is quite high, both from Russia and the United States. He received that too. Yes, this meeting is just a probe. There is no problem with this meeting. It's a global betrayal, but at the same time, this is just the first round.
A representative of the Russian delegation, Dmitriev, believes that progress in the negotiations between Russia and the US is possible in the next 2 to 3 months.
Let's be honest, progress is already visible. In fact, it's Putin. Dmitriev is being disingenuous because Putin is already in seventh heaven because he has contact with Trump 2 to 3 months. Yes, indeed. It's possible that the dialogue will become more relevant because at the very least Ukraine will be involved and Ukraine will insist on the participation of our European partners.
For his part, Zelensky states that Ukraine knew nothing about it, so it is not participating in the negotiations.
And Ukraine views any negotiations about Ukraine without Ukraine as having no results. We cannot recognize any things or agreements about us without us. And we will not recognize such agreements. There's probably a bilateral track there, and the US has the right to do so if they have bilateral issues.
But regardless of what Russia and the US agree on, the European Commission stated that it will not lift sanctions against Russia, even if the US does. The Union will implement its own sanctions policy and introduce the 16th package of sanctions, which will affect Russia's energy sector.
But we, on our side and on the side of the EU, have several packages. We are currently discussing the 16th package, which will also impact the energy sector, and which will contribute to the gradual cessation of our fossil fuel imports from Russia.
It is difficult to say whether such negotiations will have any impact on Russia since they continue to talk complete nonsense. The permanent representative of Russia to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, stated that Ukraine has irretrievably lost the territories occupied by Russia and must concede even more of its regions.
This indicates that yes, Russia, in such a demonstrative and completely inadequate position, is trying to raise the stakes and shows its dissatisfaction with the current state of the dialogue. So on one hand, it's a paradoxical situation where it seems that the Russians are satisfied with the direction things are taking, the dialogue aspect, so to speak. But on the other hand, they haven't received anything yet.
So what about peacekeepers in Ukraine? European countries have repeatedly stated that they are ready to send their troops, but they still haven't come to a unified decision. Although a group of European countries is quietly working on a plan, sending troops to Ukraine to help ensure any future peace agreement with Russia.
I will not go into details of the possibilities, but I agree that if there is to be peace, then there must be some kind of security guarantee for Ukraine. And the UK will play its role in this.
It is known that the UK, France, and Northern European countries support the idea of sending peacekeepers to Ukraine once a ceasefire is established. The Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, has stated outright that London is ready to send its troops to Ukraine to ensure the implementation of a peace agreement. Sweden is also not ruling out the possibility of sending its troops.
This all carries political risks. So now there is so much, well, let's say deep dialogue, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of different kinds of dissatisfaction. But there is a positive signal here. It's still in the fact that now they are already, truthfully, talking in Europe about all these risks, and there are countries that understand the whole perspective, and that help is needed. Ukraine needs it right now.
Meanwhile, while the first session of the bilateral talks in Saudi Arabia has concluded, Zelensky is holding his bilateral meeting with Erdogan in Turkey to discuss the resolution of the war in Ukraine. There's also a possibility of a meeting between Putin and Trump, which could take place in Saudi Arabia as early as next week.
Are Western troops entering Ukraine? Britain has shocked everyone, so Kyiv might be offered a strong alternative to joining NATO. What commitments are Western partners ready to take on, and who is already prepared to send their troops to Ukrainian soil? In the midst of a brutal war, these decisions could change the course of history. Details in our report.
While the new U.S. administration is enthusiastically organizing global talks to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, European partners are seriously concerned about the issue. Significant and reliable security guarantees for Ukrainians. The White House agrees that the security of Ukraine should primarily be the responsibility of European countries. So what should these guarantees be like to avoid becoming just as useless a piece of paper as the infamous Budapest Memorandum?
There are two fundamental positions. The first position is that it is extremely important for us to ensure so that Russia does not have the opportunity to attack Ukraine in the future. Because such conditions will persist, and we understand that such risks will be present for a long time. And in this context, developing a formula for either the country's accession to NATO or the deployment of foreign troops on Ukrainian territory, troops, weapons, forces, and resources to support us is crucial.
In the near future, Ukraine will not be able to join NATO. And the North Atlantic Alliance won't be able to deploy its troops as a peacekeeping contingent along the line of demarcation. Russia categorically disagrees with this. The option of deploying troops from certain European countries is quite a likely scenario, military analysts say.
The only possible option for deploying peacekeepers, I want to emphasize again, is bilateral agreements between Ukraine and the countries, and with each individual country. But again, there's one nuance here. Article 17 of the Constitution of Ukraine, which prohibits the placement of foreign military bases on Ukrainian territory, and accordingly the deployment of peacekeepers means permanent deployment points, that is, these are bases.
Such options have already been discussed by the top leaders of the old world. Yes, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, stated that he is ready and willing to send his country's troops to ensure any peace agreement.
But this also means the readiness and willingness to contribute to ensuring the security guarantees for Ukraine by deploying our own troops on the ground if necessary. I'm not saying this lightly. I feel a deep sense of responsibility regarding the potential threat to British servicemen.
Sweden's Foreign Minister Maria Malmer also spoke about the possible deployment of their military contingent. She stated that the country does not rule out sending peacekeeping troops to Ukraine if necessary.
Right now, we need to first agree on a fair and sustainable peace that respects international law. When we have such a peace, it will need to be maintained, and for that our government is not ruling anything out.
Earlier, the French side also spoke about the peacekeeping contingent. In general, we're talking about a little over 100,000 peacekeepers from different countries. Meanwhile, Russia's mobilization resource is about 15 million people, and this number far exceeds the capabilities of Ukraine and our partners. So, the main security guarantees for Ukraine are modern high-tech weapons of domestic production, plus assistance from European partners.
At the moment, the Ukrainian defense industry can meet the needs of Ukraine's defense forces at about 30%. It's precisely this factor, unfortunately, that is also a fifth column, which our strategic partners are pressuring, fully understanding that the lack of external military technical assistance to Ukraine will be quite problematic. So it's about developing our own army to increase its capabilities, what the president is talking about. But in parallel, first of all, we must clearly understand that this is a war. This is a war of technology. That is, we can defeat the Russian Federation not with the number of personnel, but with high-tech types of weapons.
Uninterrupted and large-scale supplies of arms, generous investments in the Ukrainian defense industry, and a contingent of foreign peacekeepers. These are the three pillars on which reliable international guarantees should be based, ensuring that Ukrainians do not feel deceived or abandoned in their fierce struggle for the security of the entire European continent.
And while the West decides whether to send troops, the Russians launched a desperate assault in Kursk with a column of tanks under red flags. And they just charged right through the minefield and under attack from the Ukrainian swarm of drones. But the elite 155th Marine Brigade couldn't make it anywhere. To see how our fighters gave them a fiery welcome, check out the report.
The Russians launched another assault in Kursk against the 47th Brigade and its allies. The released footage shows how the FPV drones of the Ukrainian defenders deliver precise strikes, on enemy equipment. To make the picture more beautiful, the elite Marines, remembering 1945, hung victory flags on the tank. As a result, the elite Russian 155th Marine Brigade did not even reach the first line of defense. The tanks and infantry took a devastating hit from the Ukrainian FPV drones and the 47th Brigade Magura.
The 155th column under red flags. Like in a parade, they went head-on into a swarm of drones along a mined road. Don't rub your eyes. We wrote everything correctly. Right under the red victory flags. And right along the mined road. This isn't just planning mistakes, it's betrayal and murder.
The enemy lost more than a dozen tanks and a company of soldiers.
The crazy grandpas ordered the victory flags to be raised on the equipment, after which they sent the column straight into the minefield, under the strikes of thousands of FPV drones, in the Kursk region. And now they've released a video showing the destruction of this red-flagged column. This is some kind of disgrace.
The Z channels have finally received a response. The commanders once again blamed everything on foreign intelligence services, without mentioning the disastrous operation at all. What is it known for? The 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet. It is known for its brutality and war crimes. In 1922, it was this brigade that participated in Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In March 1922, during an attempt to advance on the village of Moshun in the Kiev region, the Marine Corps of the Russian Federation lost at least 21 occupiers, most of whom were from the 155th Brigade. That was a cool and bold way to describe the battle. 55th,
Wow. Indeed. Marines are from the Far East. They fight coolly, skillfully, and boldly.
Putin's words turned out to be lies again, and heroism became a farce.
The equipment burned by the enemy on the way here, is that also you're doing? Yes. Yes.
The Russian Federation constantly sends the Marine Brigade into local assaults under the watchful eyes of snipers. They were mentioned by Russian propagandists in their telegram channels. The soldiers wrote letters calling for help. It's true for nothing.
The 155th Brigade has already been reinforced 3 times. The first time after Irpin and Bucha. The second time they were defeated near Donetsk. They have recovered again, and now almost the entire brigade has been destroyed near Ugledar.
The 155th Brigade was made up of 80-90% mobilized troops in 2023 in the battles near Ugledar. After yet another assault, only about 8 people are left from the assault brigade. They were captured, called for, the 155th Marine Brigade. Called for the 155th Marine Brigade.
The 155th Marine Brigade has arrived.
So the restored brigade was losing about 100 people a day for 4 days.
Those who survived said they were deserters. I would have been better off getting captured and not coming back. The attitude is as bad as it can get. They've already lost about 500 people. Maybe more.
Propagandist war correspondents criticize the Russian commanders who once again failed a military operation. They say they planned the offensive to earn bonuses from the chief of the General Staff Gerasimov and to get the title of Hero of Russia. There is no doubt that the objectives will be achieved. After the start of the Ukrainian Armed Forces operation in the Kursk region, units of the 155th Brigade, Basa, were redeployed here to the Kursk direction.
After we arrived, the enemy already... I didn't feel as comfortable as I used to. And when I found out that she came here, The 155th Brigade just stopped. Some kind of shooting skirmishes with us. Join.
They continued their crimes, already on the territory of Russia.
If it weren't for the drones, we would have kicked their butts a long time ago. Somewhere far away just for themselves.
So over time, the enemy won't hold out? On August 24, 2024, a video surfaced online showing Russian soldiers from the 155th Brigade beheading a Ukrainian prisoner of war. On January 23rd, a video was released showing the 155th Brigade shooting 6 Ukrainian soldiers. At the end of January, Russian Marines and thugs surrendered in the SPU in the Kursk region.
There's nothing good about war. Don't come here, don't sign those contracts. This won't lead to anything good. You'll either be 300 or 200. There's no way back from here. I was lucky to have been captured.
At that time, the 155th Separate Brigade of the Pacific Fleet Marine Corps was awarded the Suvorov Order. With words of gratitude for everything he has done for the people, already at the beginning of February, Putin agreed to name the Marines of the 155th Brigade in honor of Kursk. Of course, if it comes from, them, of course. Their request will be satisfied. After all the defeats, assaults, and captivity, Putin's words about how the Far Eastern Marines really fight coolly, competently, and daringly sound funny.
So the legendary Marines of the 155th Brigade of the Pacific Fleet are currently moving towards our common victory, pushing forward and reclaiming the lands of my native Kursk region. And the enemy knows that the Varangians do not retreat?
The Russian 155th Marine Brigade. It can confidently earn the title of the most unsuccessful formation during the full-scale war against Ukraine.